Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video, we'll be going through my team selection ahead of Game Week 18. We don't know if it's definitely going ahead, we don't know what matches will be going ahead, but that will not stop me trying to bring you guys some quality and entertaining content. If you are enjoying the content here on this channel, please do remember to like, comment and subscribe. It helps support me so much and it's completely free for you guys to do. Without further ado, let's jump into my team selection ahead of Game Week 18. Before we jump into today's video, I just wanted to give a massive shout out to the sponsors of the team selection videos on this channel, OneFootball. If you're new to this channel, OneFootball are the best free football application on the market. They're absolutely fantastic at the moment with everything going on with the COVID and the postponements. You can find out the latest news by heading over to the app, or you can just get things like stats, or the thing that I use it most for is live notifications during the game. You've got a live ticker, you've got the lineups, and you've also got different updates during the games as well. So if you'd like to keep up to date with all of the postponements, keep up to date with all of the latest stats and the live notifications as well, you can do so by clicking the link in the description or by scanning the QR code on your screen right now. If you do that, you support me, you support the channel, and you're also getting the best free football app on the market. If you do download OneFootball, let me know what you think of it down below. So, despite all of the chaos in Game Week 17, I actually had a pretty good game week, which is really nice considering I had to take that -12. I didn't have to take the -12, but I had to take a big hit due to have triple Spurs, Tony, etc. last week. I then bring in the likes of Dalot, Ronaldo, who are then missing out, so I then have to take another hit. So, I've been taking quite a few hits recently, which if you've watched my channel for a while, you will know isn't really in line with the way I usually play. But it's actually worked out pretty well, and I'm now back at 30k after taking 16 points worth of hits in 2 weeks. It was a big green arrow up from 50k this week due to a 77 -4. The reason for having such a good week was pretty much due to my transfers. I brought in Foden and Watkins as part of a -4 for Ronaldo and Mbeumo. So I took out those two because obviously the Manchester United-Brentford game was confirmed as being postponed prior to the deadline. Brought in Foden and Watkins. I have said for a while, if you've been watching the videos, I do prefer the 2 premium drafts. So I liked having Ronaldo and Salah. But I just looked at the way that this season was developing, looked at the fact that I didn't know that Ronaldo would be ready for the Brighton game of Manchester United, and it turns out that that was the case. So I didn't want to wait on that. And I also looked at the fact that my bench and my team wasn't as deep as I'd want it to be. It was quite a thin squad. So I thought if I take Ronaldo out, I'll be able to get in Watkins, who's got really, really good fixtures and was at the time confirmed to be available for that game. And I could bring in Foden, who I've wanted for a while. And then I would have some money in the bank in the following weeks if I needed to, due to COVID, due to whatever it is, upgrade the bench or use that money elsewhere. So I think whilst I do still prefer the 2 premium drafts with respect to flexibility, just due to the way the season's going, I decided to take that plunge, take out Ronaldo. I'm going to spread the funds slightly. And when COVID has hopefully calmed down in the new year, although that doesn't look very likely now, I'll be able to then go back to a 2 premium draft or potentially on a wild card. But for the time being, I think I'll be sticking with the 1 premium draft. So like I said, Foden and Watkins in, they brought me 24 points because outside of that, the team was largely pretty terrible. The only players that did really well already have such high ownership that it was pretty much those 2 that brought me the green arrow. Ramsdale getting another clean sheet was great. He did get booked due to time wasting, but 5 points in a week like this, you can't really complain. Trent's wonder goal, getting him 11 points. But like I said, Trent is at 99% effective ownership. If you do follow that, that essentially means that you're getting about 1% of Trent's points each week. So him getting 11 points for most of us, unless you're at quite a low rank, won't really affect you at all. James getting an 8-pointer was nice after a few really, really tough games. Alonso did get subbed off before they lost the clean sheet, which is just slightly annoying as someone that doesn't own Alonso, but still, James and Alonso, I think both getting 8 points in the end, or Alonso might have got a 7-pointer, but generally speaking, if you owned Alonso and James, that was a really, really great result for you. Livramento, looks like he didn't play. He did play. He just conceded and then got a yellow card as well. Conceded 2 goals and got a yellow card. So a little bit annoying. I could have done with Livramento doing well because he was one of the players under 50% ownership at my rank, so it would have been really good to get something from him. Not the end of the world, though. Salah getting another return. He's still only blanked once this season, Mohamed Salah. That was once in game week 2. I think it was against Burnley. So only to blank once in 17 game weeks is genuinely remarkable. And it shows why it's so easy to just slap the captaincy on him. Because, like I said, he's not going to be your top point scorer each week. Foden, Watkins, and Trent all outscored him. But you know that Salah's going to do something, or at least you expect him to most weeks. And it's that consistency which makes him such a good captaincy option. Bowen and Antonio, incredibly disappointing. 2 weeks in a row now, West Ham have failed to score. It wasn't expecting miracles against Arsenal, but he was hoping for something. Burnley, obviously, the game before, he was hoping for something. Now the game against Norwich has been cancelled. It does look like the decision to bring in Bowen and Antonio has been a pretty poor one for myself, but that is a bit of hindsight and outcome bias, I think, because they still had, I think, the 4th best expected goals in the league when I brought them both in, and Burnley and Arsenal aren't terrible fixtures, and then Norwich after that and really good fixtures. So I'm still happy with the choice I made, but it's ended up through outcome bias, I suppose, judging that. It doesn't look like the best decision in the world. King looks like a very similar decision there. Got a 2-pointer, and then he's now going to blank 2 games in a row. So King, again, doesn't look like the best transfer in the world. But again, a bit of outcome bias there. His stats were good. The fixtures were good. He's at a good price. I'm happy that I brought him in still. Foden and Watkins look like they'll be fine for this week, which means that I not only got their 24 points, but hopefully I'll get a little bit from them in game week 18 as well. And then Jota's the final one. Got a goal, finally. He seems to have such a high XG each week that you almost expect him to just not score. But he did get the goal. He's again, similar to Trent and similar to Salah. There's such a high ownership that I barely gained anything from Salah, Trent, and Jota all scoring. My rank barely changed. I think it changed like 200 places, and it just shows that you're not really gaining much from these 3 players, but you do still want to own them because they're playing so well. The bench, I had Gilmore, luckily, who came on for 2 points for King, and 2 points is quite a lot this week. It was the difference between a few thousand places, so Gilmore came on for King. And then I've still got Dalot and Cancelo on the bench. Dalot obviously will not now play in game week 18. Cancelo will come back into my starting 11, which will be massive for me. I'm glad that he's now back because I need every bit of help I can get this week. So that is how game week 17 went for me. If you had loads of players missing due to COVID, we're going to discuss it a little bit more in the next section. It is just completely out of your control. Don't panic. Don't think it's due to poor decision making. Try not to stress out because we're not all on an equal playing field. A lot of people are saying, yeah, but we're all in this together. It's just not the case. Some people will have 8 to 10 players out due to COVID. Some people will be lucky enough to only have 1 or 2. So yes, we're all in it together in the sense that some of us could experience postponements, but not all of us will have it as bad. So accept that you might have just been unlucky, accept that it's out of your control, and hopefully move forward and continue to make sound decisions wherever you can. What I would say is don't rush to make transfers and don't take massive amounts of hits, which we'll discuss in the next section, but just try and take it with a smile on your face, be positive wherever you can, and just realize that there are certain things out of our control, and all we can do is try to get as much enjoyment as we can out of the game until hopefully we return to some normality in the new year. Let's take a look at my team selection ahead of game week 18. As you can imagine, it is going to be a slightly different video today. Hopefully, by the time I've recorded, edited, and processed, the video hasn't completely lost its relevance and the Premier League is cancelled. But I'm going to assume that it's going to go ahead this weekend. There's no point me going through loads of different transfer plans. There's no point me planning ahead to game week 19, 20, 21 because we just don't know what's going to happen in the world, in the Premier League. Different fixtures being postponed. Are we going to have a season pause? It largely depends on the UK government, but it also does depend on what the Premier League decide to do. But I'm not going to hypothesize too much. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you my team all at one go, have a bit of a discussion around what sort of players I'm considering, what sort of strategies I'm deploying at the moment. I'm going to take lots of hits. I'm going to try to field 11. What about the free hit, things like this? But for the time being, let's take a look at the team. The good thing about my team is that I've got 8 players, which is okay, I suppose, and I've got 3.7 million in the bank. Now, I only have 1 free transfer, which is slightly annoying. It would be great if I had 2. But the fact that I've got a bit of money in the bank, the fact that at the moment I do have 8, I know there are definitely people in worse positions. A couple of the Raptor 1 members have sort of 4 or 5 players, and that is a really tricky situation to be in. So at the time of recording, I currently have Foster, Livramento, Gilmore, Dalot, King, Antonio, and Bowen out due to postponements or having COVID themselves. That leaves me with Watkins, Foden, Jota, Salah, Trent, James, Cancelo, and Ramsdale. Now, I suppose that the main issue that I face is that Jota, Salah, Cancelo, James, Trent, and Ramsdale all have very, very high effective ownership. For those of you that don't follow that, what that essentially means is that when they do anything at my rank, I'm really gaining very little from them. So if you take away those players that have incredibly high ownership, the 2 that I'm left with are Watkins and Foden. Now, both of those scored 12 points in game week 17, which means that I think they'll probably be some of the most brought in players ahead of game week 18. So I expect both of their ownership to shoot up as well because they are 2 teams. Remember, 5 of the fixtures have been postponed. So we are literally talking about only a few players from a pool to choose from. I think they'll be brought in by quite a few managers, which leaves me with a team that has incredibly high ownership. I've got no differentials and I'm only fielding 8. So I don't think it's probably not possible for me to get a green arrow this week. I've accepted that unless I choose some really, really good differentials with my transfers in. But you guys know that I don't really like to target ownership when I bring in players. I think my current strategy is going to be take a -4 and pray. I don't think that I want to take a -8 or -12. The reason for that is this. I don't think that you can bet on a hit in any week, let alone a COVID week, a hit paying off in that immediate week that you bring in a player. Yes, Foden and Watkins last week was fantastic bringing those in. That was only a -4 and they got me 20 points. So I got a 20-point net gain from that. That's fantastic. That will not happen every time you take a hit. There are lots of times where you'll take a hit. For example, I brought in King as part of an extra -4 last week. He got 2 points. Now he's blanking. That's the sort of thing that normally happens when you take a hit. It's very rare that you'll get consecutive hits paying off. So you can't bet on it paying off straight away. And then you've got to think, well, how sure are you that number one, the fixture's going to go ahead this week, and number two, that the fixture's going to go ahead next week? Not only because that team might then get COVID or have a COVID outbreak, but then the team that they're facing might have a further COVID outbreak. Then the season might be postponed. I'm very, very reluctant to take a big -8 or -12 this week, just because I don't know what's happening. I think I'd rather take a -4, which in my case, at the moment, would allow me to field 10 players and then leave it at that. So for me, my advice, obviously, if you've only got like 5 or 6 players, then it's a different story, I guess. But my advice would be definitely no more than a -8 for me. Probably try and stick to a -4 if possible, just because, like I said, the last thing you want to do is take a -8. Another 2 fixtures get called off, and then the season gets paused, and then you've just taken a massive -8. You've only scored 15 points because barely any games have gone ahead. You've just put yourself in a really, really tricky situation there. And then if the season is postponed or it's paused, when we come back, there's a very high chance we'll get unlimited transfers. So you've just put yourself in a really tricky scenario there, and you're just sort of gambling against COVID, and I don't think that's the most sensible thing to do at the moment. So for me, my current plan is probably Josh King and probably Gilmour out for a striker and a midfielder. The other option I have is potentially doing like Gilmour and Dalot out, or Gilmour and Livramento. The reason I keep saying Gilmour, he is a fantastic budget choice, but at the moment, even if he was available, I would be looking at it and thinking, oh, I wish I had someone better than Gilmour. And I just think with COVID, with everything happening at the moment, I'd quite like a stronger bench. And I do think with all the doubles coming up, I might want to play the bench boost before my wild card. I might want to have those options with players that have doubles coming up. And I know Gilmour would have an eventual double, but I just think that I want to upgrade that spot to maybe like a Smith Rowe or a Saka, that mid-price sort of budget enabler, rather than a £4.5 million midfielder. And then Livramento I've wanted to get rid of for a while, so this might be a good opportunity to do so. Or I've got Dalot in there, who I don't think he'll lose his place immediately to Wan-Bissaka, but all of this time that we've had off is just giving Wan-Bissaka longer to get his fitness back up and to show Rangnick that he could potentially be the starting right back. So I'm not now as confident as I was that Dalot will be the starting right back. Also, with January transfer window open soon, it might be that we're in the market for a right back. So I've got a few options there. I'm reluctant to take out Antonio and Bowen because I brought them in for the long-term fixtures and due to their price points and due to the fact that I do trust West Ham's attack. Even though they've struggled recently, even though Antonio has looked appalling, I don't see another option in that striker spot that I really like. I don't mind Lacazette, but I'm not sure that I'd want to make that transfer. I think it's very short-term. And Bowen, I just do think is one of the best mid-price midfielders at the moment as well. So I do think that if I do make transfers this week, which I probably will, it will probably be Gilmour and then one of the defenders makes most sense to me. Although Josh King could be one as well. And I could go from King to Lacazette because I've got 3.7 million in the bank. So that could be an option as well. Let's move on to my... Oh, I should just say captaincy as well. You can see it's currently on a Foden. The reason for that is, I suppose, I don't know, I'm just trying to chase the upside a little bit. In a week where there's not that many players playing, and I think there'll be quite a low-scoring average anyway, I'm tempted to take a risk on Foden. I took a risk on Ronaldo a couple of weeks ago, and that paid off fairly well. Salah is so consistent, and that is the thing that scares me. And yes, Tottenham isn't the best fixture in the world, but Spurs do still look a little bit leaky at the back, and they haven't played many fixtures recently. So if that game does go ahead, which I've got a feeling it won't, by the way, just due to the issues that Tottenham have been having, Liverpool have had a few COVID cases in their team. If that game does go ahead, I do think that due to the lack of fitness that Spurs probably have, the lack of playing time they've had, and due to how consistent Salah is, he could still get something from that game. So I do wonder whether I just do like damage control this week, captain Salah, put out 10 players, take a minimal hit, and just accept that it might be a small red arrow back to around, I don't know, 40, 45k, something like that. It seems a bit of a safe passive move, but I'm not sure at the moment what I want to do. I am tempted to captain Foden. Genuinely, the captaincy at this moment in time on the official site is on Foden. The last piece of advice that I'd like to give you, apart from just trying to not take massive hits, is put your vice captaincy on a player from Villa, Burnley, Leeds, or Arsenal. That would be my advice. They play on Saturday. Probably Villa Burnley would be a good one to put a vice captaincy on, because if the games do suddenly get called off on Sunday or midway through Saturday they decide, or Arsenal Leeds is cancelled, I just think it's a good idea to try and slap your vice captaincy on someone that plays as soon as possible. That would be my advice. So look, I would probably say something like a Smith Rowe, Saka, or Watkins would be really good to put your vice captaincy on. At the very least, it does mean if those games on Sunday are cancelled, then you've got at least a captain. That's just my opinion on it. So as far as I'm concerned, I'll probably keep my vice captaincy on Watkins unless that game is postponed. Then I'll move it to Ramsdale in my team, or an Arsenal player if I do bring them in. And then I'll put my captaincy on one of Foden, and Salah will probably be the move I make. Let me know down below. I'm not going to go into it in much detail here, just to, we don't know what's going to happen, but who is your captaincy currently on? Are you feeling a Man City player, or do you think you're going to go safe with Salah, or potentially captaining Watkins? First game of the week. Obviously, people don't like the early kickoff, but due to the amount of games we've got, it's not really an early kickoff. So I don't mind captaincy on Watkins, but I think I prefer Foden or Salah myself, but definitely vice captain someone playing on Saturday. So based on all of that, just briefly go through my watch list then, based on the fixtures that we've got, the price points that I have, etc. You can see it's quite minimal this week, and there are players on here which I'm not necessarily keen on going for, but the reason they're on there is that they play. And we're in that sort of strange position now where we're picking players that just literally will have a fixture. What I would say is I wouldn't necessarily rush to take out players that are blanking just because they're blanking if you can field 9, 10, 11. The reason is they're going to have doubles coming up soon. The more matches they miss now, they're going to have doubles. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say hold Ronaldo for his impending double because we don't know when that will come. But some of the cheaper players that you want long-term anyway, if you can keep him in your team, for example, someone like Gallagher, I'm not necessarily saying you should keep him, but if you wanted him long-term anyway, if you can afford to take out other players in your team that you didn't necessarily want, that might be a better plan. So players like, for example, you might just say, you know what, I just want to keep Livramento. I'm happy with him. I think he's still a good budget option. I'll keep him in my team. That's absolutely fine. That's a good tactic to take. So these are the players on my watch list. I've got 3 defenders, 4 midfielders, 3 forwards. As I said, Gilmour and one of Dalot and Livramento would likely be my transfers out this week, assuming everything stays fairly similar. In which case, I'm looking to bring in a sort of budget mid-price enabler in the midfield a little bit, probably around 6.5 million. And I'm looking to bring in a relatively cheap defender for Dalot or Livramento. So with the way that the fixtures are, I'd like to make my transfers players that play on Saturday due to the reasons that I just said in the pass section. I'm looking to bring in players that play as soon as possible so that I at least get some points on the board. So I'm looking there at those 2 fixtures. You would fancy Aston Villa to beat Burnley. You'd fancy Arsenal to beat Leeds. So I'm looking currently at an Arsenal midfielder in for Gilmour and then an Aston Villa defender in for one of Livramento and Dalot. So if you look at my watch list, therefore, I'm looking at Konsa. I reckon it will probably be in for Dalot. The reason is I think Dalot is a better option than Livramento if he's playing, but at the moment I just want a player that's definitely fit and available. Now with COVID it's impossible to predict, but when Livramento is fit and when Southampton play, he's going to play. Dalot I think will be rotated slightly. So it'll probably be Konsa in for Dalot and one of Smith Rowe and Saka in for Gilmour. I think I want Saka. The reason for that is I think Saka is more nailed on to start. I also think, I haven't taken a massive look at the statistics, but Saka does tend to rank higher than Smith Rowe for the underlying stats, and he's just looked fantastic. He's looking fit, he's looking confident. And Smith Rowe has struggled a little bit with injuries recently, had a little bit of rotation as well. Yes, he came on and scored straight away, but I just think that Saka's probably the safer bet, and at the moment we just need players that are on the pitch. I can't really afford to have players benched. So if I was forced to make transfers now, which I'm definitely not, I'm 100% waiting until Saturday afternoon, I would probably bring in Saka for Gilmour and Konsa for Dalot. Just with respect to the other players on this list, Bernardo Silva, if he's fit, I think is a great option because he's likely to play because he only got 45 minutes. Gundogan equally only got 45 minutes, so I think there's a good chance he plays, but I don't really want to upgrade all the way to that. And that would also mean a triple up on City, which I just think I'd rather, at the time of recording, I think it's best to just avoid triple ups where you can. If you've already got them in your team, I wouldn't panic because you've got them. I don't think it's worth taking a transfer to remove them if they're playing, but I'm not necessarily sure I want to triple up on any fixtures at the moment. Outside of that, you've got Diaz and Laporte. Again, same issues there. I think they're quite expensive, but also the fact that I don't want to triple up on City. And then the 3 forwards, if I am going to take Josh King out, the 3 that I'm considering is Chris Wood, who I don't think it's a terrible fixture against Villa, but they do look a little bit better at the back, and I'm just not sure that I fancy bringing in a Burnley attacker that much. Lacazette, I think, is probably the best option up front. So if you're taking out Antonio, or you're taking out Josh King, Dennis, whoever it may be, and you've got a bit of money, taking out Ronaldo, I think Lacazette would probably be the option I go for. They've got Leeds and then Norwich, and he just looks pretty good. He was on penalties as of Game Week 17. He did have that penalty saved, but I do still think he'll probably be on penalties when he's on the pitch. And then Jesus is the other option. I think that he will start this weekend due to Mahrez starting midweek. Mahrez tends to just start the midweek games, whether it's the Cup, whether it's the Champions League, whether it's the Premier League. And then Jesus tends to, I should say, not definitely gonna happen. Jesus tends to play at the weekend. So that would be my watch list. There are players that I've currently got that I would put above all of these. I think that Watkins should be a priority transferring up front if you don't own him, but I already own him. And Foden, I still think, and I've said this for weeks, it's not outcome bias from Game Week 17. I think Foden is the Manchester City midfielder to own. So the 2 players that I brought in for Game Week 17, Watkins and Foden, I do think should be above all of these on your priority list. That is my current watch list. Like I said, anything could happen over the next 24 hours or 30 hours, whatever it is by the time this goes live. But for me, I'm looking at Arsenal and Villa players just because they play first. They've got decent fixtures and they've got decent long-term fixtures, Villa and Arsenal as well. So I don't mind them too much. Let me know down below. How many hits are you taking? Which players are you looking to bring in? Is there anyone on my watch list that you're looking to bring in? Just let me know all your dilemmas below. And if you want to, just rant below. Tell me how many players you have. I'm very, very interested to hear. I suppose the final thing I should say, just before we move on to the final section, is free hit. Just a bit of a discussion. I haven't really planned anything here. For me, I would avoid, if possible, to play the free hit. The reason for that is this is not going to be the only week where we're suffering due to COVID. Also, with everything up in the air and with that impending decision about whether the Premier League is paused, I'm not confident enough that they won't just make a decision this weekend to pause it. Also, I just think that there are future weeks where you can chase further upside. You can play it in a double game week. We're going to have so many double game weeks upcoming. You could play it in a double game week, in which case you could get 22 players out, essentially, because you have 11 times 2. So that's a great way to play it in a double game week. You could play it in a blank game week when there are better fixtures to target. Everyone's already got triple Liverpool. Most people already have double Man City. This doesn't feel like a week where there's massive upside where you can target differentials. A week where you might want to play it is something like, I don't know, where Manchester United play Leeds and no one has any Manchester United players and you can bring in like Bruno, Sancho and Ronaldo. That's the sort of week where there's a premium team playing a really poor defence and you can bring in a triple up from that team that no one else will have. Most people will own Chelsea, City, Liverpool players anyway, so you're not really gaining much on the opposition and the managers around you. So I would personally avoid it for those two reasons, because you can potentially play it in a double or you can play it in a blank game week where there is a higher upside than this week. And also, I just don't know for certain that they're not going to postpone more games, and then you're left with a really small pool of players to pick from. That being said, there are a few Raptor 1 members that have messaged me that have been left with 1 or 2, 3 or 4 players, or like 5 players, 6 players. I think if you're 5 or less players and you don't have 2 free transfers, I would strongly consider playing the free hit then, because you're going to have to take a -4 to field 7, and that seems very, very low. However, if you own 5 and you have 2 free transfers, I would take a -4 and field 8. If you have 6 and have 1 free transfer, I would take a -4 and field 8. I think the aim for everyone, and this is just a general sort of, for me, just a general yardstick, I would try and aim for 8 players if possible. I wouldn't be taking -12s, -16s to do so. At that stage, I'd either just field 5 or 6 and just hope, or I'd probably use the free hit. But for me, 7 minimum, pushing 8 would be nice. If you've got 9, 10, 11 players, that's absolutely fine. And that's why I'm perfectly happy taking a -4 and fielding 10 this week. Even if it goes down to 9, I'd be happy. Even if it goes down to 8, I can't see myself taking a -8 for the reasons that I listed in the prior section. So I guess what I'm saying is I would avoid at all cost I would try and avoid using the free hit. Apologies. I would try and avoid using the free hit. However, if you're stuck with sort of 4 or 5 players and you've not got 2 free transfers, and the 4 or 5 players you have are people like Brownhill, and they're players that you don't really want to play, or there's any injury concerns such as Bernardo Silva, at that stage I would consider playing the free hit. My final piece of advice is, if you are playing the free hit, do not activate it until 30 minutes before the deadline. You don't know which games will be called off. You don't know if the Premier League season will be postponed. You do not know what will happen. If 3 other games are called off, there's no point playing it, because you've only got 2 games to choose from. Everyone else will be in the same boat as you, where they'll have barely any players. So I would wait as late as possible. If you do activate it before and the game season's postponed, I don't know that the FPL admin would give you your free hit back. There's a chance that they'll just say, well, you've activated it, so that's that. So activate it last minute. Get a free hit draft plan just in case you want to play it. But for me, I can't see a world in which I'm playing the free hit this week. I'd rather just field 7, 8, 9 players myself. Just want to finish up today by saying a massive thank you to the Raptor Hall of Fame, the legends that continue to support this channel through thick and thin. Obviously, with the Christmas period coming up, with everything going on in the world, I'm feeling very, very grateful and very appreciative for everyone that does continue to support this channel. Even if you're just watching this and you're not a member, I do appreciate you as well, but especially the guys that do continue to support the channel through the membership feature on YouTube. I'm not going to ask for anyone to join today. I'm not going to explain what it is. If you do want to, you can look into it. But I suppose what I wanted to do today was just thank you guys that have signed up already. You really, really do help to support me. You help support the channel, and I can't thank you enough for your continued support. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 18 team selection. Bit of a discussion around the sort of strategies that I'm deploying at the moment. I hope that was still an enjoyable watch. I know it'll be a much shorter than usual and it's a bit messy, but that's the best that we can do at this stage, I'm afraid. If you are enjoying the content here on this channel, please do remember to like, comment and subscribe. If this is my last video before Christmas, I really hope it isn't. I hope that I can still continue to make content whether the season goes ahead or not. But just in case it is, I hope you all have, for those of you that do celebrate, I hope you have an incredible Christmas. And please just stay safe wherever possible and enjoy spending time with your families if you are able to spend time with your families. If you are down for whatever reason and you're not with your families, you can always drop me a DM on Twitter and I'll try and get around to responding to that. And don't feel like you're alone. There's always someone to reach out to. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. over this busy period and over the hectic period with everything going on. I appreciate it. For those of you that are still tuning in, you're absolute legends, and you wouldn't believe how much I appreciate the support. Thank you so much. I hope you have a green arrow in Game Week 18 if it does go ahead. Thank you so much for watching. Cheers. Bye-bye.